At 2:47 a.m., the security cameras at the edge of the town's West District glitched for exactly 7 seconds. No one noticed, except for the janitor of Grayson High, who swore the footage had changed when it came back on. The walls inside the abandoned East Wing, closed off for nearly 3 decades, now had something drawn on them, symbols that hadn't been there the day before, symbols that glowed faintly in the dark. It started, like most things do, with a dare. Maya Chen had just moved to Grayson 2 months ago. Her mum called it a fresh start. Maya called it the middle of nowhere. 17, sharp-eyed, and never quite able to keep her head down, she had a knack for seeing things others missed. Strange reflections, echoes that didn't match the words spoken, clocks that ticked just a little too slowly. She didn't fit in, not that she tried, but the people here weren't mean, just quiet. A kind of quiet that's not peaceful, but, watching. It was her 3rd week at Grayson High when someone brought up the old East Wing. "Bet you won't even step inside," one of the soccer guys had laughed. "It's cursed." She didn't believe in curses, but she did believe in proving people wrong. The school itself looked ordinary enough from the front. Red brick, cracked windows, a flagpole that hadn't seen a flag since the early 2000s. But past the main courtyard, past the chain-link fence with a broken padlock, was the East Wing. No signs, no warnings, just silence. The kind that wrapped around your spine and whispered, "Don't go further." She waited until after detention. Detention for snapping at a teacher who mispronounced her last name for the 5th time. The sky outside was already bruising into twilight, and the hallway lights buzzed overhead, flickering like they were nervous. The janitor, Mr. Kessler, was mopping near the science labs when she passed. He didn't say anything, but he paused mid-swipe. She could feel his eyes following her down the hall. The door to the East Wing wasn't locked, just rusted. It creaked like it hadn't been opened in years, and for a second Maya wondered if she should have told someone where she was going. But that was the thing about curiosity, it didn't wait for common sense. Inside, the air felt colder. Not cold like temperature, but cold like something had stopped breathing a long time ago. The walls were stripped bare, wires dangled from exposed ceilings, and a single desk sat in the middle of the hallway, faced the wrong way toward the wall. Maya pulled out her phone. No signal, of course. The flashlight flicked on, casting long shadows across the cracked tiles. And then she saw them, markings on the far wall. At first, they looked like graffiti, but as she stepped closer, she realized they were carved into the wall, like someone had etched them with a knife or something sharper. They weren't letters. They weren't numbers. They weren't anything she recognized. And they were glowing. Only slightly. Faint, like moonlight caught in stone. She reached out, fingers brushing the edge of a symbol. The surface was ice cold. Her breath caught, and then, behind her, something moved. She spun around. Nothing. But she could swear the desk had shifted, just slightly, just enough to be wrong. Then came the sound, soft, distant, like chalk scratching a board. But every classroom door was shut. The hallway was empty. Still the sound repeated. Scratch, pause, scratch, scratch. Like someone was writing. Maya backed away from the symbols, heart racing now. Her flashlight flickered, once, twice. And then the wall behind her buzzed, no, vibrated. As if the carvings weren't just symbols, but something alive. Her fingers trembled as she tried to take a photo, but the camera app wouldn't open. She swore under her breath, shoved the phone back into her pocket. A sudden gust of wind burst through the hallway, except there were no windows, no open doors. The sound stopped. She stood frozen, barely breathing, eyes darting down the corridor. And then she noticed something else, on the floor just beside the desk. A torn piece of paper. Old, yellowed. She picked it up. One word. "Decode!" She ran. Bursting out into the main hallway, Maya didn't stop until she was outside, gulping air like it was the only real thing left. Her phone blinked back to life. 3:03 a.m. Her hands were still cold, but she didn't realize until later that the ink from the symbols had stained her fingers. Back at home, she tried everything. Google, translation apps, forums. She found nothing. The symbols didn't exist, at least not on the internet, which made no sense. Everything's on the internet. The next morning, Maya returned to school like nothing had happened, but the hallway looked off. The posters were rearranged. The clocks were all frozen at 2:47. No one else seemed to notice. Then came the whispers. Other students started talking about the East Wing again. About how someone had gone missing years ago. About how no one went in after dark. About the code, the one no one could read. A girl in Maya's chemistry class leaned over during lab and muttered, "If you touch the wall, you start dreaming in numbers." She didn't ask what that meant. She was too afraid she already knew. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, the symbols burned behind her eyelids. She dreamt of halls that turned into tunnels, of clocks that melted, of voices whispering in a language she couldn't understand. In the morning, the paper she had taken from the hallway was gone. In its place, a new one. Same paper, same corner torn, but this time it didn't say decode, it said, "You've already started." And now she couldn't stop thinking. If this code wasn't written by students, if this wasn't just some prank, who left it there in the first place? And more importantly, who or what is waiting for someone to solve it? The next day, Maya skipped class. Not that anyone noticed. Grayson High had a way of swallowing its students, like their absence barely rippled the surface. But she wasn't ditching to avoid school. She was investigating. There was a pattern, she was sure of it now. The paper had changed overnight. Her fingers still carried faint stains from the symbols, no matter how many times she scrubbed. And there was that new rumor she overheard in the hallway, that if you whisper the code out loud, the lights flicker in response. Not when, not if. Just the lights flicker. She needed answers. But first, she needed access. The East Wing had been chained up by the time she arrived, a rusted lock now clamped across the door. Someone knew she'd gone in. Someone was trying to keep her, or something, out, or maybe in. Maya circled the building, scanning every cracked window and missing tile. And then she found it, a broken vent, just above the maintenance shed, barely wide enough to crawl through. She didn't hesitate. 10 minutes later, dirt smudged and sore from the drop, she was back inside. And the hallway had changed. The desk was gone. The wall with the carvings, clean. As if it had never been touched. No glow, no paper, nothing. But there was something else now, faint footprints in the dust. Not hers, too small, too light. Leading away from where the desk had once stood and toward a stairwell that had been sealed for years. At least it should have been sealed. The caution tape was shredded, curled like something had clawed through it. The stairs led down into what must have been the old boiler rooms. The air turned thick, heavy. Her flashlight caught glimpses. Graffiti tags layered over older carvings like someone had tried to hide the original marks beneath false names and symbols. At the bottom, another door. This one wasn't locked, just cracked open, as if inviting her in. A metallic whine echoed from deep within, like a chain dragging. She stepped inside, a room the size of a classroom, but completely stripped bare, except for one thing, a chalkboard standing crooked against the far wall. And on it, someone had scrawled dozens of the same symbols she'd seen before. But now they were mixed with letters, numbers, equations. It was a code, and someone had been trying to solve it. Maya stepped closer. A journal lay open on the floor, old, stained, its pages warped with water. She picked it up. The handwriting shifted from neat block letters to frantic loops as the entries went on. Names scratched out, pages torn. One entry read, "The school was built over it. They didn't know. They thought it was just foundation. But the symbols, they weren't made. They were found." Another line, scribbled sideways down the margin. "They move when you're not watching." And suddenly, Maya felt eyes on her back. She turned quickly. No one. But the chalkboard had changed. A new symbol had been added. She hadn't heard a sound, and that's when she realized. The lights weren't flickering from bad wiring. They were reacting to her. She moved closer. One of the numbers stood out. 11:07. A time? A date? She didn't know, but the moment she whispered it aloud, the room dropped 10 degrees. Her flashlight blinked off, and from somewhere in the dark, a voice whispered, "Wrong key." She froze. The air pressed against her chest like it didn't want her there. But she didn't run. Instead, she opened the journal again. Beneath the last page, folded in half, was a drawing, a map of the school. Except the map showed more than just classrooms. It showed hidden hallways, sealed floors, a sub-basement no one ever mentioned, and right in the center, a circle with an eye drawn through it. The next clue wasn't on the wall. It was under the school. She climbed back to the main floor, heart pounding. She needed help, but who could she trust? Her first thought was Mr. Kessler, the janitor. He had seen something that night. He'd known she was going to the East Wing. Maybe he knew more. She found him in the cafeteria, quietly restocking napkins like nothing was off. When she asked him if he knew anything about the old boiler room, he didn't look surprised, just tired. "You shouldn't be poking around down there," he said softly. "Why not?" "Because it's not done watching yet." Before she could ask what that meant, he walked away. But Maya noticed something as he turned, a small burn mark just behind his left ear. The shape of one of the symbols faded, almost scarred in. Someone had marked him. And maybe he wasn't the only one. That night, she scanned the map again, this time under black light. To her shock, the page lit up with even more symbols, a trail that hadn't been visible before. It led directly to the sub-basement, and next to it, scribbled like a warning, "Only the chosen can enter. Everyone else forgets." She didn't sleep. The next day, she snuck back through the vent, followed the trail on the map, past the boiler room, past the crumbling locker-lined hallway, until she found it, a locked hatch beneath the old gym, hidden under a rolled mat and years of dust. It had no keyhole, just another carved symbol, like the wall. She reached out, and it opened. Inside was darkness, but not the kind you walk into, the kind that breathes, that waits. She stepped down. The walls were covered in new symbols, fresher, as if someone had just finished carving them. And in the center of the room was a circle drawn in chalk, symbols dancing around its edge. But what made her blood run cold was what was inside the circle, a mirror, cracked, and in its reflection, she wasn't alone. Behind her, footsteps echoed softly on the cement floor. She turned. No one, but the reflection. still showed a figure, and it was getting closer. Maya couldn't move. The figure in the mirror wasn't a shadow. It wasn't just a trick of the glass. It was standing behind her, tall, obscured by flickering light, head tilted in that unnatural way that didn't belong to anything human. Her breath caught in her throat. She spun around, heart hammering, fists clenched. But there was nothing, only the dim outline of the underground room and the endless scratchings on the walls. She looked back at the mirror. The figure was gone. But the circle she'd stepped into now had changed, the symbols around it glowing faintly, like embers stirred awake. The air buzzed with static, a low hum that burrowed behind her ears. She reached out to touch the mirror's edge, and the glass rippled, not shattered, not solid, liquid. Her fingers sank in an inch before she yanked them back, ice shooting through her veins. And then the mirror began to pulse, as if responding to her presence. One symbol in particular, a spiral inside a triangle, flared brighter than the rest. It matched the one that had burned into Mr. Kessler's neck. A memory snapped into focus. In the journal, one of the entries had mentioned time loops, repeated sequences, memories erased. It hadn't made sense then, but now she saw it. The figure in the mirror hadn't been following her. It was her, older or younger, distorted, like the reflection wasn't showing the present, but a flicker of something that had already happened, or was about to. She turned and ran. Her footsteps pounded the ground as the walls pulsed behind her, down the hallway, past the carved doors, through the broken hatch and up into the gym, heart racing like it was trying to outpace time itself. When she finally emerged into the night, the sky had turned an unnatural shade of grey. Not quite evening, not quite dawn. She didn't stop until she was home. But her house didn't feel right either. The lights were dimmer. Her phone showed no notifications, no time, just across the screen. And her mum? Gone. No note, no sound. The kettle on the stove still whistling, water long evaporated. Maya stumbled into her room and opened her laptop. She began typing frantically, searching everything she could about the mirror symbol, the codes, the history of Grayson High. But her internet connection stuttered, every tab freezing at the same page. You were warned. That's when she heard it. A knock at her window, 3 slow taps. She didn't live on the ground floor. With trembling fingers, she peeled back the curtain. No one was there. But on the outside of the glass, etched into the condensation, was a symbol, the same spiral inside the triangle. She stepped back, knees nearly giving out. Something had followed her, or maybe it had always been there, watching, waiting. She grabbed the journal again, flipping through it for anything she'd missed. And there, near the back, was a page she didn't remember seeing before. A diagram of the mirror. A note beneath it. The code doesn't open the door, the code closes it. All this time, she had been trying to unlock something, but maybe she'd already let it out. She knew what she had to do. The journal described the code as a seal, a containment method, something ancient, forgotten, only visible under pressure, fear, trauma. That's why the school had been built over it. Why the wing was sealed, not to hide a treasure, but to hold something in. The treasure was safety, and now it was breaking. She had to go back. This time, she brought chalk, the same kind she'd seen in the circle. She followed the map again, slower, more cautious, back through the cracked hallways, past the locker that buzzed when she walked by, to the hatch. The room hadn't changed. The mirror still stood at its center, But now it was no longer just a reflection. It was a portal. Faint whispers bled from its edges, language that didn't belong to anything earthly. She stepped into the circle, closed her eyes, and traced the symbols one by one around her with the chalk. Each line sparked slightly as she drew it. One wrong mark, and she'd be trapped. The journal had warned of that too, that the code wasn't just a key, it was a prison lock for something intelligent, something ancient enough to wait inside a mirror for decades, and patient enough to trick anyone curious enough to get close. The final symbol was the spiral. She hesitated. Her hand shook, but she pressed forward, finishing the loop. The humming stopped, the air stilled, and the mirror cracked, not shattered, not broken, just fractured. Inside it, her reflection smiled back at her, except she wasn't smiling. The room around her faded, slowly at first, then all at once. The symbols vanished, the light flickered, the hatch sealed. She woke up the next morning in her bed. Sunlight streamed through the window. Her phone buzzed. Time, notifications, everything normal. Her mum called her down for breakfast. Just like any other day. Except Maya remembered everything. She checked her hand, no ink, no stains. She checked her backpack, no journal. She ran to the school. The east wing was gone, not sealed, gone, as if it had never existed. She asked about it in class. Her classmates stared at her blankly. "What wing?" they asked. Even the teachers looked confused. There had never been an east wing. And that's when it hit her. She'd been looped, reset. Everything had gone back to normal. Except her. And as she stared into the school's hallway mirror later that day, her reflection didn't quite match her movements. It blinked, just a second too late. Maya stopped looking in mirrors after that. At first, it was little things. A blink out of sync, a smile that lingered too long. But then it became harder to deny. Her reflection would look over her shoulder even when she didn't. It started watching her. She covered the mirror in her room, taped cardboard over the bathroom one, avoided shop windows. But reflections are everywhere, in puddles, in polished tiles, in the lenses of someone else's sunglasses. And every now and then, just for a second, she'd see it again. That version of her that had come back from the mirror. Except now, she wasn't sure it wasn't her. A week passed. No one at school mentioned anything strange. No missing time. No hidden wings. Not even Mr. Kessler. He just smiled vaguely when she tried to bring it up and said, "Must be stress. Kids imagine all kinds of things." But he knew. She could see it in his eyes, that same flicker of recognition, and the faint scar behind his ear. Maya started noticing others with it too. A girl on the bus, tracing spirals on the fogged glass with her fingertip. A boy in the library reading a book that wasn't in the catalogue. Teachers pausing mid-sentence like they'd forgotten something important, and then continuing as if nothing had happened. They weren't all marked, but some were, and they remembered, at least parts of it. The more she looked, the more she saw. The map hadn't just shown the school, it had shown layers, versions of the school overlapping, shifting, as if it existed in different timelines, one safe, one cracked, one about to break entirely. And the mirror? It wasn't the source, it was the access point. The code had sealed something in, yes, but also kept something else out. A boundary, thin and aging. And now something had slipped through. Every night, the dreams came. Corridors without end, chalk symbols dripping like blood. That sound again, the dragging chain somewhere just behind her. Sometimes she was in the school. Other times it was a version of her house she didn't recognize. Similar, but off. Like someone had rebuilt it from memory but gotten the details slightly wrong. The worst dream was the one where she woke up inside the mirror and watched herself walk away. One morning, she noticed something new. A symbol had appeared on her wall, just above her bed, drawn in a faint, silvery dust. She hadn't put it there. She touched it, and her finger came away cold, colder than the air in the room. The pattern was familiar. The spiral again, but now inside a square. She flipped back through the remaining pieces of the journal she had managed to copy before it disappeared. That symbol had only one meaning: containment failed. She didn't know what triggered the breach, whether it was her crossing into the circle or speaking the code aloud, whether she was supposed to be the gatekeeper or just another pawn. But one thing was certain: the game had reset. Only this time, the rules had changed. Maya wasn't the only one seeing the symbols now. More people started noticing them carved into lockers, hidden beneath desk graffiti, flickering for a frame during morning announcements. The school morning bell rang at the wrong time, 11:07, the same number from the mirror room. No one else reacted. But Maya heard it echo deeper than it should have, like the sound came from beneath the floor. She tried to warn others. She even confronted Mr. Kessler again, demanded the truth. He sighed, looked her in the eye for the first time. "They're watching the watchers now," he said. "You think you found a code, but the code found you. That's how it survives." "Then how do I stop it?" she asked. He smiled, a sad, hollow smile. "You don't." That night, she checked her phone again. It had recorded a voice memo she hadn't made, just static. And under the waveform, the file was titled, "Listen when the clock stops." She played it. At first, only white noise, then a whisper, a phrase in her own voice. "You're not supposed to be here yet." The file deleted itself immediately afterward. She stared at the blank screen, and then her reflection blinked again, but not just late this time. It smiled at her, lifted its hand, and in the palm was a key. She didn't have one. When she reached up to touch the glass, it felt warm, like a heartbeat, and she realized the mirror was no longer locked, not here, not in this version. She could open it, step back through, finish the seal properly, or destroy it. But what would be left of her on the other side? Would she come back whole? Would she come back at all? The next morning, Maya was gone. Her room was undisturbed, her phone left on the bed, cracked, the mirror clean. No one remembered her name on the school roster, not even her friends. When asked, teachers shrugged and said, "We've never had a Maya here." But sometimes, late at night, a girl's face appears faintly in the school's hallway mirrors, staring, unmoving, always watching. And if you're alone, if you're really quiet, you might hear her whisper the code just once. But whatever you do, don't answer, because it's not really her anymore. And you might not like what answers back. Who left the code in the abandoned school? That question never got a clear answer, because maybe the code wasn't left at all. Maybe it was waiting to be found, waiting for you.